Welcome back to the DMV Autocross Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Garfield, and along with Dustin Grubbs, we're going to discuss the DC ProSolo that we just recently had with our new competitors, Jay and Caleb. We're also going to discuss co-driving at an autocross with Clyde Caplan. But first, a message from our sponsor this episode. Fastest second day time doesn't win you a national championship. I see the t-shirt on you. Speaking of the national championships, the 2025 SCCA Solo National Championship registration is opening on June 17th. We're going to discuss why you should go and what it's like on an upcoming episode. But for now, let's talk about the DC ProSolo. Welcome back, Jay. Welcome back, Caleb. We recently had the ProSolo that you guys were doing your first time. We want to get some thoughts on that. So let's just jump right in and discuss what you thought of your first time out there. And either one of you, Jay, why don't you go ahead and start and let me know what you thought of the event.
Okay. First, it was amazing. It's so much different than your typical regional event. The amount of work that goes into to make it happen, I can't imagine what happens behind the scenes. I love just the flow, the format, just going back to back to back to back. It really helps you kind of hone in on a lot of things you don't get to do, or you just might not think of when you're doing the regional events where you go run and you wait for 20 minutes to go run again. I really enjoyed that. And then really cradle to grave, seeing the whole thing, seeing the shootout and everything. It was a fantastic experience that I will be repeating.
That's awesome. And Caleb, I mean, I'm sure you had probably similar feelings, but anything different for you?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the rush of adrenaline and the fact that you're just going like all at once, like right now, like no time to think, just go. But I will say, I also feel like that was the most fun I've ever had in a paddock, actually. Like when you go to your local event, you just pull up and set up your car, and then you're, waiting around for your heat or when you have to work. But like you not only like get through your runs quicker, but then you also have more time in the paddock, which sounds lame, but honestly, I think it's kind of fun because you're honestly just like tailgating and watching everyone else run, honestly. So I don't know. That was really cool.
That's
with those multi-day events. Like, it's not just that daily rental of a paddock spot. It's kind of like you're home for the whole weekend. So yeah, people tend to hang out and bring food and lounge items.
Yeah,
and just kind of hang out.
And even more so, you are going to meet more people because this is a national event, so you have people traveling in from all over the place, and maybe some names you saw on Facebook or the internet that you now get to meet in person, and that have similar interests, in terms of cars and the types of events they're going to go to. So yeah, I can see where the paddock would be something new. Like you said, like Dustin said, it's for the weekend. It's not just for a day, which is kind of insignificant when you're in and out of there at a local event. This is you get to spend time the whole weekend with people. And of course, it also depends on if some people are just going home because they're local at night, and others are there as late as they can be. In this case, it was 8:00 for Northwest Stadium. They kicked us off at 8:00, so which is kind of a bummer, and that's not always the case. A lot of sites let you stay there as long as you want, overnight, whatever, and that's when you'll really see a little more partying. Now that atmosphere is more about Friday night than it is Saturday. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's probably both nights, but obviously people aren't hanging around after Sunday. They get out of there. So yeah, that's good to hear that you thought about that. Let's talk about that intensity that both of you kind of realize. I don't want to scare people off because it's a cool intensity, right? It's to be able to pull up to the line and you've got run after run. Let's sort of walk through that. We did that in the video with Dustin, so you could see an idea. But let's talk about those emotions when you're in line. What's that feel like?
Oh yeah, for sure. That first one, you don't really know fully what to expect. You've heard it. The video that we had put together before was immensely helpful with okay, what to expect, what to look like on the tree, like the right spot to try to figure out when to launch. All right, I rolled through and practiced a little bit. Let me shake my wheel to make sure I'm good. And then just everything hits all at once when that tree starts. Like, you're so focused on the tree that you get that, yeah, I nailed it. Oh, there's cones. Like, right there. Like it's immediately like right away you're in it. And that's actually one of the things I really liked about it. And the second, actually I'd say maybe the third and fourth run on the first and the AM heat really started to come together a little bit. That first one was a complete wash. And then the second one I pushed too hard because I knew I didn't push hard enough. And then it started to come together a little bit on the third and fourth runs for me.
Yeah, so that's an important point, is that it's easy to be very nervous and maybe not understand what's about to happen. Caleb, talk about what happened with your experience in terms of from that first run and maybe even through the morning and then maybe to the afternoon, what you went through there.
Yeah, a lot of the same. I like Jay said, I was very focused on getting the start right, because that's the part of it that's like new when you go to a pro solo and kind of unique to everything else. But yeah, honestly, I think it wasn't until like Sunday that the emotions kind of started happening, because that was when, for me, that was when things actually started coming together. Like on Saturday, I don't know, the morning was, I think I red lit like twice in the morning. I don't think I had a time on the left side until the afternoon. And so, I started just finally getting the course down actually by Saturday afternoon. And then Dustin saw it in my video of my Sunday runs. I shaved like over like a second, maybe like a second and a half off of my right side run. And then as I'm coming back to get over to the left side, I look up and I do a double take, because I'm like, wait a second, holy crap. So then, I get really excited about that as I'm crossing over, and then I get into the line for the left side run, my last run of the day. I'm like, okay, hold on, I gotta like get everything back under control and focus on this left side course. So that's honestly that's the most emotional I've been, I think, doing autocross ever so far.
And I believe you did it again on the left side. I think you were sitting on a red lit roll time and a coned roll time, but then you went and finally ran that clean roll time on your last left side run.
Yep.
That's exactly. I mean, I shouldn't say it's a common experience, because everybody doesn't have quite the dramatic emotion, but a lot of people do. And the start being not even being new. If you're having trouble with the start, it does affect the rest of your run sometimes. I mean, obviously, if you can focus really well, it doesn't. But I'll give you an example for us this weekend, for Lisa and I. This was an unusual start for us because we're in it's not a mod car anymore. It's an XU car, but the point is, it's a heavily modded car. We don't even have an emergency brake now. That's something you would use in an instance if the car rolled at the start at all. Well, we were rolling forward. So now all of a sudden the start became this questionable, are we going to stay staged or that sort of thing? We were trying chocks. And so Saturday, all of our Saturday runs, I was concerned about the start a lot. And once the grip came in at the start and I was able to get the car to sit there, all of a sudden I started getting better starts, and I got my two best runs. Also on Sunday, I knocked off a bunch of time, but because I was able to cut good lights and I was able to get good 60 foots, which lent to the entire run. And quite frankly, a lot of the time that I picked up was just in the start and then happened to be in the finish too, but not even so much the middle of the run. That start was huge for me. So yeah, so you're doing that crossover, and you look up at that clock, and you're obviously excited, but like you said, you have to quell that excitement so you can prepare for the next run, because it's right there in front of you. Either one of you have anything to talk more about that glancing at the clock and just thinking about those things?
Yeah, I had something that actually really messed me up with that. It kind of got me super down because I looked at the clock too late, and it was actually the person behind me. And I thought I had done so well, and I was just rushing through my head like, I know I corrected and fixed a lot of issues. Should have been at least 2 seconds faster than that, and it was. But I didn't know until I was done and I got to look at the times. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, it was really eating me up when I was going into my last run.
So I think something that might have helped that I figured out like halfway through was after the run going ahead and turning on the radio so you could
Yep.
listen to the announcer
Yep.
announce your time.
Yep.
Because I was like, I'm going to get messed up looking at other people's times. I'm going to forget to look until the last second. And I was worried about that happening to me. So I started trying to turn on the radio as soon as I finished.
Yeah, so I tried that. That was my goal, but I hit the Bluetooth thing on my steering wheel, and it starts yelling at me, and it turned off my radio, and I was like, "Oh no!" So
That's a common 86 complaint I've heard. Yeah, I was even struggling a little bit, that past weekend with I was really having to rely on the radio because, with those left and right courses, I would come across the line, I'd look at my time, I'm like, is that good? Is that slower? I can't, it's like you're remembering two different times. Did that throw you all off at all?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at like one course that's like 30 to 33 and the other that's like 35 to 38 or whatever, like that's a pretty big difference, and you're like, oh my god, I ran a 38 on the right, I'm horrible.
So quick
Yeah.
funny story. I ran my first right, and it was a relatively good right off the start. And then I ran my first left, and I came in, and I went, "That's impossible. How did I run so slow?" Not knowing the courses were 3 to 4 seconds different. And I believe Dustin was there. I believe that was you
Yeah.
that turned to me and was like, "No, that's a good time."
I very quickly realized what you were thinking. You were thinking more equivalent times,
Yep.
and then Lisa and I, your wife, we were taking care of him in the staging lanes, and we're like, well, he doesn't know he's in first place right now. We'll just let him drive mad.
Yeah.
I kind of did the opposite thing. So Daddy-O he started on the faster course. So when he came across with his initial run in the 33s, and my initial run was like a 38, I was like, whoa, like just blown away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and this goes back to what Dustin just said is he and Lisa were there with me while I was driving and vice versa. We had mentioned it before. It's not easy because of people's work assignments or whatever else they're doing, or when they're driving or preparing their car. It's not necessarily easy to get somebody to be there, but if you can, it's really critical because they can save you from those quick emotional moments or the tire checks or the whatever. And in our case, we at one point we had 3 people. We had somebody doing tires, we had somebody using the blower on the because we don't have a fan in the car, and we were trying this chalk idea for the wheel. And so I had 3 people working with the car, a little overboard. We need to fix something for that, but the point is, again, back to the community. This sort of ties into the paddock that you were talking about, and the hanging out and partying. It's like these are your new friends that you can now. Hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Hey, mind doing my tire pressures while I'm in line, or just pay attention to the times. So yeah, did you guys have any help during the weekend?
So I didn't, and it wasn't until like right after my last run that I talked to Greg Sharp, who's one of my buddies. We're always kind of fighting for D Street locally, and he's like, "Yeah, you should definitely have said something. I had someone checking my pressures. He could have run up and done yours too. Like we got to work together." It's like, man, that's the introverted part of me, or introverted part, that just didn't come out and ask that question, which is something I love about this event, is because that part of me kind of gets buried, and I come out and I talk to people, and you learn so much.
Yeah. I didn't really worry about getting anyone to help me like in line. I was just kind of focused on like getting where I needed to be. Now perhaps at a future pro, maybe I'll be a little braver, but realize that I do have a little bit of time in between runs to either have someone check pressures or get out and check them or whatever. But one thing I will say is after our runs, when we all get into impound together, everyone just kind of comes together in a huddle to be like, oh, I did this time. And like, I almost had you. And like, but the fist bumps after we all hopped out of our car and got into that huddle for S5, that's really when I don't know, that's really when everything came together. Just sharing those fist bumps with everyone and like, oh, good job, man. I saw you picked up a second and a half, like, nice job. And, Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. Especially, I mean, obviously we have all the technology of live timing and stuff like that too. So you can be on your phone, not while you're driving, but while your competitors are running, maybe second drivers are running or something of that sort. Or if you're a second driver while you're watching. While you're watching the other drivers run, you can kind of keep track, and I think that's important too. Is that knowing how you experienced maybe a lack of assistance only because you didn't ask, maybe, but knowing that there's always going to be somebody looking for that assistance too. If you have some downtime and you see one of your fellow competitors up there and they're not getting any assistance, certainly offer it. I mean, I think it was invaluable. I mean, I made a post after the event thanking some people that were there for me, and it was like 4 or 5, 6 people that were just throughout the event, and sometimes it's just somebody coming up and telling you something that's so helpful to help you enjoy that event. So yeah, it sounds like you guys had a really good time though. Any final thoughts with your experience?
I have a thought that I thought was kind of important to share. I have only been autocrossing for about a year now. And I would absolutely recommend a pro to anyone who's as new as I am, because I think I'm leaving this event with more confidence in my driving than I ever have. And it's not because, my goal was to not finish last in my class, and I achieved that. But it's not because of that. It's because these courses, these courses were so quick, they were so good, and you're running 4 times in a row, and you get to do that same course 3 times, 3 sessions. You really get to hammer things in and really get down to the nitty gritty details on these courses, that you get to wholly master these courses and really figure out how to just send it on these courses. And I think because of all of those things, I think this has been the single most confidence boosting event for my driving as a pretty much still a brand new autocrosser. So I think, I've done schools and stuff, and I think that's really helpful. Definitely do schools, but this is another kind of stepping stone that I think is going to elevate your level as a new autocrosser. So
that's awesome. Jay, you have any final thoughts? I mean, how will this affect your future of autocrossing?
Oh, in a big way. For one, we don't have a lot of people typically that are in my class specifically locally with the same car, with the same desires and whatnot. There's a couple of people there that have the experience, like Danny Kao. He's always somebody I can go talk to for certain things. He's helped me out, made me realize how I've been running way too high tire pressures, which has been amazing. But talking to some of the other guys that have the fully kitted out, for D Street specifically for me, I didn't even know I could have some of the modifications that I can. So now knowing that going into it, while I still need to work on the driver mod first, I have something to kind of build to and something to think about. Maybe I'm not running the right wheel and tire setup, or maybe not quite wide enough or not, based on how everyone who's crushing it has the very similar setup. And they do. You can definitely tell they shop on Carceps and have all the same kit. It's definitely something I'm going to look at next year when I get back and I'm able to hit it full throttle.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming out again. I'm glad it sounds like you had a great experience with the ProSolo, and thanks for being here with us beforehand and afterhand, because that's kind of invaluable to see what you got out of it in your experience. So Caleb and Jay, thanks again for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks to everybody for the event. And it was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about co-driving, and this is something that goes on. It's always been going on in autocrossing to give you advantages in different aspects of the sport. And with us, we have Clyde Caplan. Clyde, I've known for a while, and like me, he's been having a co-driver for much of his autocrossing career, if you will. Clyde, welcome to the show.
Hello. Good to be here.
Yep. Let's just start off with something basic. Why do you choose to have a co-driver in this sport?
There are a few reasons. Having somebody to compare against like every event, and the same person over and over again. I think it helps both me and whoever it is that I've been co-driving with to improve, sort of see where we're losing time, where we can make up time, whether it's during the event, in between runs, and being able to make quick adjustments and go, or after the event. Um, Another big thing about co-driving is I find it makes it more fun. It's like you have to find the right person, but when you do, it makes most of it more enjoyable, especially doing a lot of national events with a lot of travel, spending a lot of time in the car. And then the other big thing is doing a lot of national events is not cheap, and being able to split costs is a big help.
Yeah, I think when I started co-driving, that was obviously the initial thing, is whether you split hotel rooms or and gas or tire costs or whatever it is. So let's talk about choosing that co-driver. Now, I like to think of that co-driver as somebody. At least over time, I've learned the hard way that you don't just grab anybody to be a co-driver. I've had those before. So let's talk about the personalities and the time commitment and that sort of stuff.
So the first time, or before I got serious and started doing national competition, I'd done like one event co-drives with friends that were local, and I had somehow met this guy named Mark Sipe, who was from the South, and he's a bit older than me. He'd been doing it for a long time. I think I met him on a message board when I got my RX-8 when they were brand new. And he had just gotten a BMW Z4, and he was like, and I think we were coming up on the 2004 DC Pro and Tour. He's like, hey, you want to swap co-drives? We both drive my car for one of the events, and we both drive his car for one of the events. And then he invited me to co-drive with him to be a tire warmer at Nationals that year, and in his Z4. And I went, and I drove horribly, but I had a really good time. And I learned a lot from him initially, that like I don't think I could have done a season-long co-drive with him, but occasional events with him were really good.
Yeah.
And then
so picking that co-driver, I guess we should step back a little bit because we started to talk about national events already, but let's think about the fact that you don't necessarily, a lot of people don't go to national events, and so you might have a co-driver locally. Now, that co-driver locally still needs to gel, but you're not spending the night at hotels with them. You're not going out to dinner with them. You're not splitting a lot of costs necessarily. So that local co-driver maybe is a lot easier to pick out. Maybe somebody in the same car or wants to drive the car, perhaps.
Yeah, so somebody that you think that you get along with, that you trust enough to drive your car, particularly if it's your car, and if you're going to be the co-driver, also that you feel comfortable driving somebody else's car that hard. But yeah, in a local situation, somebody that you think you'll get along with well enough that you already know, but you don't have to sort of fully commit to them, and put yourself in a position where, like, if it's your car, you're making it available to them for an extended period.
Right.
And if it's not working out, that can be a problem. So it's like, it's got to be somebody that you trust and you feel good being around.
Yeah. Let's talk about that subject too, about, you are driving somebody else's car, and there is a responsibility there. And we don't want to hide the fact that, you're driving somebody's car, and technically in most cases for a lot of people is an uninsured environment. So you need to know that you're responsible for that car. Now, having said that, I feel like in the past, my experiences have been that if something breaks on the car that was going to break anyway, a sway bar mount or a shock or something there was no impact or anything like that, generally I wouldn't hold if it was my car, I wouldn't hold the person driving my car responsible. A perfect example is in 2022, our car, the whole chassis fell apart in the back end while Larry Casey was driving it. And that's not his fault. It was going to come apart. It was going to happen. It just so happened to do it while he was driving. Huge expense. I would have never even thought for a second that it was his problem. But by the same token,
if you go lawn mowing,
you go off the track somewhere, or you hit something, then you got to realize that you're on the hook for that, right?
Yeah. So, 2023, I was co-driving with John Vittenbos in his street mod RX-8, which is now an XA RX-8. But anyway, I was co-driving with him for the year, and we were at the Charlotte Tour that year. And I'm down at the far end of the course, and I'm coming out of the big 180, and about to turn right, and all of a sudden it just like that, because the front subframe had failed, and the left front wheel is way up, and shock was bent, and then we got to jack the car up and push it off all the way off course, and that was a lot of fun. And that was something where it was going to fail. It was going to fail on the next run, no matter who was driving it.
Right.
But some years earlier, I was driving another car of John's, and I touched a pole.
Touched a pole.
Yeah, and I took care of the damage for it. And it wasn't even a thought to me. But after that, sort of find out about other situations that happen with other people,
sure.
And it's something that people don't. A number of friendships have ended because people didn't think the same things.
Right. And I guess that's what's helpful for us now, is to educate people on the fact that if you're driving somebody else's car, you're responsible regardless. I mean, you just need to know that before you even get in. And over the years, I've even had, with one particular person, I actually had a written out contract. The person also happened to be a lawyer. So that made a difference, but I had no qualms in signing that contract. And that also included not just driving, but if I was loading the car into my trailer on my own, that I was responsible for the proper loading, of that car, which, I get. I mean, if I load it wrong and then the car rolls and hits something, I mean, it is my fault, especially if they weren't there. Now, in general, you want to be there all the time with the co-driver as much as you can. It shouldn't be something where they're dealing with everything on their own, or you're dealing with everything on your own. So I think that's important to understand too. But like we're saying here, there's generally a relationship there already, and there needs to be an understanding of what is supplied. So let's talk about the deals, the deals that are made. I mean, let's talk about you and I can especially go through the different scenarios. So talk about some of the, what was required of you when you were driving somebody else's car, or somebody else was required when they were driving your car.
So it's largely a question of what value is each person bringing to this partnership, and that's really what it is. And it's they're in some cases, some years, the co-driver will supply all the tires, and you'll split all the other costs.
And that's pretty common too. Is in the case of, if you're driving somebody else's car, they're bringing the car, and maybe even the truck and trailer, who knows? But if they're bringing the car, that's wear and tear on their car, and so supplying the tires seems to be a happy ground there where you do all that.
Yeah, but it also depends on what car you're driving and what kind of tires they use and how big they are and how often you have to replace them. Because it's if you're driving an NA Miata and you're on tires that are, you're going to need one set of, relatively cheap tires for the entire season versus something that eats tires and you've got to replace them every 3
and they're Hoosiers and they're much more expensive or something like that.
Yeah,
although the street tires have come up there, but
so the dollar value for that is different.
Right.
In some cases there's been a fee that the co-driver pays to the car owner. When I've been co-driving with Kevin Henry over the last few years, a lot of times we'll tow my car with his truck, which saves me a lot of miles on my car. And then having the truck as an additional vehicle, it's almost like having a rental car as well. It's
Right.
good, for us to be able to either get out of the rain or do whatever. And then there are also places where if sometimes somebody will want to get somebody really good in their car for a year that also provides coaching, and that can be of enormous value to some people
Right.
some years.
Right. Almost.
And
So you may choose, if I'm going to have this, 10-time national champion and I'm going to learn from them, maybe I'm going to not charge them at all, or hope they win tires for us and just supply tires through that means. But that's a good point. If you get that coaching, there's an advantage to the even to the car owner in that case.
Yeah, and actually, that's another good point. There's not that much contingency money available these days, but there has been in the past a long time ago.
Right.
Also, making sure that you have a common understanding with your co-driver
Right.
for how that contingency money or product is going to be split, shared, or
Right.
kept.
Yeah. So, and to be clear, for viewers that don't know what contingency is, we've stepped into this before, but essentially you run some logos on the car. Maybe it's a brand of car, brand of tire, and you win, or you get second or whatever, and you win some money. And the whole point is you're going to get, maybe $500 for a win. Who gets that money? Is that split down the middle? Is it only go to the person who earned the money through competition? So yeah, that's another good point. Is there's money there, and of course, if you're both winning it, or if you both win just as often, or you just splitting the whole pot. So yeah, that's another good suggestion there.
Yeah.
Now we were talking off camera earlier. We were talking about a good time when would be a good time to maybe pick up a co-driver, and this one scenario Dustin was talking about. Somebody was changing cars, and maybe one person doesn't want to be in their car anymore, and they both want to be in the person's new car. That's a time when the relationship can start, particularly if you both want to be in that same car from the beginning.
Yeah.
So we've touched on agreements and the criteria for your co-driver, and I was also wondering, are you personally looking for someone faster, slower? I mean, or do you want to coach? Do you want to be pushed? And also, after that, have you ever gotten into arguments or disagreements about car setup? What if you've the personality's great? I know this person, get along with them, but we just have different driving styles. We're not fast in the same setup.
Yeah. So, a lot of things in there. The first thing that comes to mind is driving with Kevin Henry last year. Like one of the, we were in my Camaro SS 1LE, and one of the things that we found, I last year came to the conclusion that I really like the car being looser than he does. And we were kind of fortunate in that we were able to get there with adjusting rear tire pressure compared to front. So we could change
Pretty
it
quick
for
change.
each of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that would have been more involved than that would have been more difficult.
Right.
And
I mean, a shock change maybe very quickly between runs, but you're not making a bar change in between every run.
Some people
Right.
like the car loose, and some people like the car tight. So if you're going to have to once you figure that out, you're going to have to work out a solution to it. Otherwise, one person's kind of basically not driving the car the way they want. It's not really that fair. I did think of something though while we were talking about this that people probably don't even think about, and that's seat position. You don't pick a co-driver that's twice your size or half your size to where the seat position is very difficult to adjust every single time.
I saw a quick little tip from Nats. I saw someone doing. They would put a piece of tape on the seat and then 2 pieces of tape on the door sill to line up driver A and B. So just very quick. Yep, this feels right. So you don't have to try to do it by feel every time. But then some cars like Daniel's Porsche has memory 1 and 2. So just you're 1 and 2, now you're done, easy.
Yeah, but then if you're driving a car that has more of a fixed seating position, like a couple of years ago, Kevin and I were driving Oscar, and Kevin's a little taller than I am, but like our torso to leg ratios are are different.
And be Miata. I mean, you've got to, you sit up tall, or you might be down too low, or whatever. There's a lot of room that you need to be able to adjust that for.
And was that with a fixed seat?
And the seat was fixed in place because we couldn't get the seat low enough for Kevin to sit in it if we had rails for it to be able to be adjustable. Okay. And for me to fit in the car, we had to have like another cushion behind my back and the seat back, because otherwise I'd be driving with my arms like locked forward, and that wasn't going to work. And I think there was something similar when Shelley Montfort was driving with John Vittenvoss in the BMW, doing something. They could only move the seat so far, and so it's like another cushion. But those are certainly considerations if you're outside the extreme of what you can do between runs.
Right. And that's in our current car, in the Stalker, Lisa and I drive together, my wife, and the seat, it goes all the way forward for her, and we have to make the belt adjustments. And I did actually mark the belts only for her. I didn't mark them for me, but I'm pretty good at adjusting while I'm in there. It's a real pain to adjust if you don't get it right. But for hers, it's seat all the way forward, cushion goes in, belts go to the lines, and we get it right just about every time for her. And she's usually the second driver, at least in the pros and stuff. So we made it work, but in other situations, and sometimes you'll be surprised, it doesn't, a lot of it's about torso length or leg length. It's not about height. Myself and Shane Chinnen have driven our Stalker, and Shane's significantly taller than me, but he likes to sit closer. Or somebody else might, I have very short legs, so I sit close to the wheel already compared to some people, but other people like to sit close, and that works out well for them. So we can actually co-drive even though the height differences are way off. Whereas it might not work for other people. You get into a car that's restrictive, or maybe it's ceiling height, right? You got to think about ceiling height with a helmet on. I mean, because I'm longer torso and I sit most stock cars, the Camaro is one of them. I don't fit in the Camaro. I sit it, and my head's on the ceiling right away. So yeah, it just depends on what the car is and torso length and leg length.
Interesting. Come find me sometime when I've got the Camaro, Brian.
I drove Danny's, and I did not fit very well. And also, those cars are so horrible to look out of. But
no, they're not. They really aren't.
I second Brian.
You just got outvoted, Clyde. No, they're great cars. They're just the visibility out of them is tough. And and again, we just stepped on another thing there, which is, you got to want to drive it. You got to enjoy driving it, right? You don't want to get into something for the whole season. Maybe if you commit to the whole season without knowing what that car's like. And that's a consideration as well, where it might be better to definitely do something at a local event first.
Yeah. So it's funny you mention that. So it's like, Kevin Henry and I have been driving together mostly over the last couple of years. And we're not driving together this year, although we are going to be driving together up in Maine. But because he wanted to move into a car that was smaller, and that he thought that he wouldn't hit as many cones with this year.
Yeah.
But that was the thing is, he was really quick in the car quite often, but he would cone a lot.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating. And so like that also gets to like having good communication with your co-driver and talking about like what's going on and what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and sort of working towards those kinds of things.
Right. Well, and then I guess that brings up another thing too, is I mean, obviously we touch on it every time we mention something, but the personality of the person, maybe once you're in a co-driving situation, it's not the same. How they handle frustration when they're driving, how you handle them or yourself, the whole relationship there. It sounds, it's kind of a marriage of sorts, where you need to be able, if they're upset and maybe you have, what to say to get them back on the right page, or vice versa, so that there's a big benefit there to that relationship.
Yeah. So, I've been on a lot of long drives home where, one person was, frustrated or unhappy with how whatever event went, whether it was me or the other person. And it's sort of like being aware enough to sort of respect that and, talk about other things or whatever, or allow that silence to happen.
Right.
But it's finding somebody that you connect with well enough, and that you have an outlook on things that is compatible with the other person's. And it's like, like Kevin is really laid back and can handle sort of anything that you throw at him. John can handle anything you throw at him, but he'd be the first one to say that he's much more tense and
sure.
And it's something. It's like I can get along really well with both of those, and I don't know how I'm really perceived by anybody else, but we've driven with both of them for a long time and back and forth over time. I seem to be able to get along with them as well.
Yeah, well, I'll probably say that I'm not as easy to get along with. Fortunately, my wife gets along with me well, but I can tell you just from the number of years now, I've jumped around cars a lot, but I mean, I've had, I think, 12 or 13 different co-drivers since 2000, and a few of them for like 2 or 3 or 4 years even. And then there were things like the shifter cart where I didn't co-drive a whole lot. Or, Mike Klein would co-drive with me, but there was a fitment issue anyway. So that was always a pain. So, but the one thing I did notice is that you do need to be aware that, I can think of one person in particular where the relationship kind of changed a little bit as we were co-drivers, not in the best way. It wasn't bad, wasn't arguing or anything like that. It just wasn't the same as when we were just friends. So sort of a heads up, as it doesn't always work out the way you think. But then I've also had some that, went really, really well. And the only reason they changed is because I changed cars like I did a lot over the years. But those relationships were great. And that time co-driving was great. So
now when these go sour, in your experiences, is it usually just disagreements on setup, or have you ever found yourself getting too competitive with your co-driver? Like, man, he's gotten me 4 events in a row. This is my car. Has that ever...
That has not been my experience. It's like John and I co-drove for 4 years, and sort of at the end of that, the last year, I was sort of getting in my own head, and I was sort of spiraling, and I was not as competitive as I wanted to be, as much as I wanted to be. And I realized I need to take a step back. I need to not be so serious. I need to not do quite as many events. And at the same time, John had decided he really wanted to get serious about getting better. And so it's like we were on sort of 2 different roads there.
Yeah.
And it's like you spend a lot of time with people. Sometimes they're going to do things that are going to irritate you. I mean, Brian said, like a marriage, and in a lot of ways, it sort of is. It's like you're in really close proximity to somebody for quite a while, especially if you're traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If it's local only, it's like when Brian was talking about having a number of co-drivers over a long period of time, I just remembered, and I'm sorry, Brian, Brian's mother was one of my co-drivers for a year.
Yeah. Locally. Yeah.
And it was just, it's like she was there. I provided the car. It wasn't that much of an impact on me one way or the other. And I talked to her about the car and how it was driving and stuff. And I think Jane was just having fun with
yeah. So I one experience that, I've had a couple of awkward ones over the years, but one particular one which was it was agreed upon at the beginning of the season that the whole point was we were co-driving to split the costs. And it turns out it was actually my most lucrative monetary season that I had ever had in 2005. And the co-driver that I had chosen on a whim, it was a student that I had at the time. And he had been driving a Mini and I'd been driving a Mini, and he was really into the idea of doing national events. And I said, all right, we'll co-drive. Here's how it works. Well, he only made one national event all season when I did 4, including nationals. And he kept saying, well, I'll fly out. But from the beginning, we had agreed upon gas and hotel. And even when I went by myself, he still paid me for gas and hotel. Now, he was somebody of significant means, so it didn't really bother him a whole lot. And he was also, like we said, you kind of agree upon something at the beginning, and he held his ground, or he held to the agreement. And so even though I drove to, different national events, and he last minute, he'd be like, no, I can't do it. I got to work. And then he'd go, oh, well, I'm going to fly out. And then he'd never fly out. And so there was only, I think there was only one national event we did all season, but he still paid half a gas and half a hotel the whole time. So it wasn't the best because I didn't have the travel mate. And that's one more thing we can touch on is, I guess we did in a way, is that, again, this person is your travel mate if they're running nationally, or maybe they're just your dinner mate after each of the local events, along with maybe some other people or whatever. But the point is, you're spending a lot of time around this person. And I don't think it should be taken lightly that you just jump in and just ask anybody to co-drive because you like their car or like the person and you want them to co-drive your car, or they're fast or whatever. So yeah, I think those are all very important points.
Kind of back to what Clyde was saying, like your autocross visions, are the same path. You both have the same goals and want to do the same events. Like this, it's just the same idea of autocross.
Yeah. So like you want to do the same event, but it's not, you don't necessarily have the same goals. It's just, you want your goals to be compatible with theirs.
Right.
Sure.
That's
yes.
true.
Because one person can be ultra competitive and way out at the pointy end, and the other person can be, just another person that's there as trophy fodder. But that's all they need to do. They're going because they enjoy it. They like hanging out in paddock and doing whatever else, and just, and they like the person that they're co-driving with.
Yep.
And this comes back to the understanding of what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
So question for both of you, Clyde, you first. I don't even know how many cars you've co-driven and owned to co-drive, and then just co-driven and not owned. So what is that ratio? And then, do you prefer to own the car or not own the car? Pro and con. Answer how you want.
I'd have to do like counting and thinking and remembering.
Okay, so would you rather own the car or not own the car?
Depends on the car.
Okay.
If it's something that's a street class car, I would probably prefer to own it. If it's something that needs more maintenance and attention to setup work, then I can do on my own.
Like John V's RX-8?
Yeah. If that's like the template or the ideal, because there's no way I'd be able to do that. And if I owned a car like that, like I bought something that's turnkey, ready to race, and and I tried to get somebody else to commit to co-driving with me in it, and it's like, I'll have the car ready. It's going to break at the first or second event, and that'll probably be it for the year, and that's not fair to the other person.
Right.
So I would imagine the car owner probably saves more money, but then you always have the, if the clutch goes, what if, a diff goes? I'm responsible for that.
Yeah, but it's one of those things also where it's almost certainly going to happen, and it's just a matter of who's driving it then, and it's part of the calculation you have to make, and that if I'm co-driving, the car's going to have twice as much wear on it than if I was driving as a single driver.
Yeah, and I was going to say before when Dustin said, maybe the owner of the car saves a little bit of money, but it's like if you're running a business, you have to calculate all the expenses in there, and one of those is wear and tear on the car. So
saving money to save up for
the parts that you're responsible for. And there's also, I guess, in a way too, Clyde, that, even with a relatively stock car, you could still, I don't know, let's say it's the transmissions on the WRXs or a clutch on I don't know which particular car the clutches go out on a lot, but let's just say there's a clutch issue that's common on a car. Maybe that's agreed upon at the beginning of the season. Hey, we're both covering the cost of the clutch. it's my car, but we know we're going to wear this clutch out very quickly with 2 drivers at Pro Solos doing launches and sort of.
Yeah, like the early ND2 transmission issues. Yeah.
All the ND2 all the ND
NDs,
transmission issues.
Yeah.
All of them. But again, also it's like, clutches, and there are some things. Some drivers are much harder on equipment than others. And there are mistakes that you can make as a driver that can cause mechanical damage, and they're like your fault because you did something you shouldn't have done.
Right.
It's like like driving Oscar. It was really, really hard for me to shift it into third gear. It was also hard for Kevin to shift it into third. Every now and then we'd go into first.
Wow.
It did not cause an issue that we had to do something about. It was like both of us would realize it before we'd like fully let the clutch out,
right,
and put it back in. It was just, blown run. But, if I'd been able to shift faster, I probably would have screwed that up.
Yeah.
And that would have been my fault if I had done that. Or maybe it would have been Kevin's fault for, having the shifter in it. It was there and it was so hard to figure out. But that's also back to having an agreement for who's going to cover what if whatever happens before it happens.
Yeah, and I think on a final note, I think that's important, is just knowing what you're getting into when you get into it. Try not to. I mean, I think some people might find it a little tedious to get into all those details, but it also depends on your relationship, and most co-driver relationships, you should probably be getting into that, unless it's, I'm not talking about that with Lisa. We know what happens when something breaks, but the point is, knowing how you're going to handle everything is really important in that co-driver relationship. So,
one other thing to mention, it just on me, you said something earlier about, do this, it's not insured, is there are carriers out there that will insure you for autocross, and they're remarkably inexpensive. Like if you're doing a national season, it's not that much.
I feel like I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like I heard like $1,000 for a season or something of autocrossing. Does that sound far off base?
That sounds like a lot more than I'm paying.
Okay.
Who I have it with, the car, so it's like stated value. There's a decent sized deductible, but I think I'm paying like $400 for the year for the Camaro.
Okay.
And it also covers the car if it's being co-driven.
Okay. Well, that's a really valid point right there. And I don't know that we had all this years ago, the availability of this insurance. I know there was always track insurance, but that's definitely a good point, is that nowadays you can get the insurance involved so that there's less of a big deal if something happens. I mean, obviously it always sucks, but covering it up front would be a good idea. And then of course you can just split that insurance too.
Yep. Or the co-driver can pay for it as part of the deal.
True. Very true. Because otherwise,
question on this topic: towing while the car's on a trailer, is that covered by this plan or your normal insurance plan?
My policy has something about what it is when it's on the trailer.
Mm-hmm. But I've heard issues of people not getting the coverage they thought they had when it was being trailered.
You definitely need to ask. I mean, my policy for this particular car is through Hagerty, and I specifically said it's going to be in a trailer traveling to events. Is it covered? And the answer was yes. But you need to ask and see where it is in writing, so you can prove it too. But things like, I worry more than anything. I worry about theft. On the road, somebody breaks into the trailer, steals the car, somebody takes the trailer off the truck, or something of that sort. But
so Locked In covers you for that too, if you buy the riders for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's the other one I've heard of.
Yeah.
Well, Clyde, this has been great. I appreciate you joining us and, giving us this insight, having this discussion about the ever important co-driver, which of course can improve your driving and maybe add a little extra fun to the sport along the way. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Dustin, that's it for this episode. You've got your 2023 shirt on. We're going to be talking about nationals in the next episode, so make sure you have the 2024 shirt on.
I'll make that happen.
If you have any questions or comments, make sure you hit us up, dmvaxpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you on the next one.
See ya.